Wes Craven, Alfred Hitchcock, even Rob Zombie. These are all names that come to mind when you think of horror and suspense films. But there's a new guy on the block, and I bet you know him better than you think. Grammy Award-winning artist Slash has had a new venture into horror films called Slasher Films. We sat down and chatted with him about what he thinks is going to happen with his new production company. Let's take a listen.
I'm a huge horror fan from as long back as I can remember. You know, I always have been infatuated with the whole genre. The movies that I was raised on as a kid came anywhere from the 30s all the way through the 80s, and they were very story-driven and character-driven, very what I would call psychologically scary movies. And that's what I want to try and reestablish, because ever since the late 80s, that sort of aspect of horror movies has become very few and far between. It's mostly what you call sort of gore and shock slasher movies, you know. And so there are some good ones, but all things considered, I sort of miss the movies where you got really involved with the character and the story really kept your interest, and you didn't have to rely on shock value to scare you, you know. I never thought to branch out and produce movies on my own. What happened was I hooked up with Rob Eric from Scout Productions, and he and it's just a social thing. And we got into a conversation about horror movies, and he produced a movie called Session 9, which is an amazing, scary movie. And so then I started telling him about my passion for horror movies, and he was basically taken aback at my vast knowledge of the history of horror movies and like that. And so he thought it would be a good idea if I actually produced them. And he called me up the next morning and he said, you know, you could start your own production company and we would back it. And that just seemed like an amazing idea, because it just never occurred to me that I could do that. And about a year later, because he was looking for scripts for me, and finally a year later he gave me the first script that he thought was really good and I should check out. And it is a brilliant script called Nothing to Fear. And so at that point, I really liked the script enough to let's go ahead and do this, you know. And since then, we've actually managed to get 3 more really great scripts. And so I feel like I have a good instincts for this. No, this is like when I first started playing guitar. I know absolutely nothing. I mean, I know a lot about how movies are made, and I know a lot about horror movies in particular, but I've never actually produced anything. But all things considered, I have hands-on. I'm hands-on through the whole process, from script development to casting, obviously picking the director, sound design, the score, locations, all that kind of stuff. So I'm just gonna, go with my gut, and I also have a Scout behind me, so they've got my back, and they have tons of experience doing this, so I'm in good company. I mean, it's not like I'm all of a sudden jumping into romantic comedy. I think horror movies is something that people picture. They look at me and they look at what it is that I do, and they probably think that makes sense. So no one's really questioned it. But the one thing I was getting a lot was what you mentioned earlier, was I just tacking my name on. And this is not something that I don't think anybody gets into the horror business to make money. So this is really just from the absolute love of horror movies, and people sort of get that, I suppose.
I'm Lori Lee Beckman for Park City Television, and we'll keep you posted on all the exciting updates of a transformation from guitar god to power producer.